Accudemia is something that I really love, this system. And there is so much to love about Accudemia. And I would like to show you today just a few tips or best practices, if you want to call it, about certain configurations that maybe they are not that well known. And I would like to present it to you so you can have, a deeper knowledge on what you can do and how you can take advantage of new features in Accudemia, right? And I would like to start first with the very basic raw configuration in Accudemia. And this is really important because what you see in the screen right now related to the calendar blocks or the sizes of those blocks is going to be something that is going to impact on each and every one of the tutor calendars in Accudemia for every one of the centers. This is something that is unique in a way, just because from this configuration, everybody else is going to be feeding. So it's really important to get this right the first time if possible. And if you notice right there, the sizes of those blocks or the length of those blocks, they can be set to 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour. So what I would like you to consider is, in my experience, according to my users and what I have seen, it is a lot better to choose the shorter length that you can consider for these blocks. And the reasoning for that is that if you have smaller blocks, then you have more flexibility to schedule your appointments and your walk-ins. Why? For example, let's say that you pick 30-minute blocks. So if you pick a 30-minute block, that means that your least, your smaller session, it has to be 30 minutes. Because if you choose, let's say, to give the option of 15 minutes, then if somebody chooses that block and they schedule only for 15 minutes, then the other 15 minutes are going to be wasted. So, and having 15 minutes, in that case that you pick the smaller block size, which is 15 minutes, give you the option of having really small sessions or really large sessions. So you can have, for example, 15-minute sessions, 30-minute sessions, and 60-minute sessions. So it's going to give you a lot more flexibility. And remember that since everybody's going to be using this same setting, then it's going to be a lot better to have that possibility instead of having to waste some of those blocks because somebody's going to be taking them and is going to be using just a portion of the session and not the complete session. And I would like to show you, just in case you don't know where is that, if you go to the administration control panel, let me bigger, there you go. Administration control panel is going to be right there in the general setting. So if you go there, remember that you need to pick the school scope and you click this view setting. So right there, you have the blocks per hour. In this case, you see I have 30 minutes, but it would be a lot better if I had 15 minutes because I'm going to save this quickly so you can see that now if I go to any of my tutors calendar, and I'm going to pick randomly any here, then you see the block size is going to be a lot smaller. So the student maybe they just need 15 minutes, so they're going to take, let's say, this Wednesday 8 to 8:15. So I have more blocks to share between my students. Okay, so that is something that I have seen that sometimes if you pick the bigger block, then some of the tutors are going to be complaining, or I mean, it's a lot better to pick the shorter length, right? Another thing that I would like to point out is that this auto sign out feature that we have in Accudemia. Okay, let's say that your students always sign in and sign out. You have, your team. If it's not the student, then the tutor is signing them out. So you have no issues with that. But it would be a lot better, even if you don't think that you're going to be using it, to take advantage of this feature. And the reasoning for that is that if your tutor forgets and your student forgets, then Accudemia is going to be assigning a more normal length. Like for example, in this case, as you can see there on the screenshot, I am assigning if they are there for 90 minutes, then I am assigning a 45-minute session length because probably the student forgot. And it's a lot better to have this 45-minute length automatically assigned than having a 6 or 8 hour session log because somebody forgot to sign out. And actually, you can always go back to the session log, but in the case that you have a lot of sessions going on, it's really easy to sleep one of these, and then maybe when you get a report, you're going to see that one student spent 50 or 60 hours at the school in 1 week, which is not for real. It's just that the session length is way too big because you don't have the auto sign out. And this is right there in the control panel general setting too. So please go there, take a look at it. I think that it's going to be worth it to enable it. Even if you put a really large, let's say that you want to put instead of 90, you say, okay, if they are there for 5 hours, even larger than that, I'm going to assign 2 hours or 3 hours because I know that it's impossible for a student to be there that long, right? So this auto sign out feature is something that sometimes we don't use and is really important. So consider using it, okay? Another thing that I would like to show you, and it's the standby log. Sometimes we don't use it. I usually tell my users to use this, and the reason for that, and this is also in the general setting, is that if somebody tries to sign into a kiosk and you don't have those standby logs recorded, like you see there, in the radio button that I have record on standby, then you could lose some information that is going to be worth it because, for example, maybe somebody's trying to sign into a kiosk and they don't know their ID. So you're going to see some maybe similar IDs that are going to be there in the standby logs over and over again. And then you can probably locate that user and help them to get the right information. Maybe somebody's trying to use the right ID, but you have it wrong in Accudemia. So maybe my ID is 555 and I try to use it and it's not letting me in. So if you go to the standby logs and you see that and you look for that, maybe that is the right ID for the student, but it's just that in the import or maybe somebody put it wrong, and then you can right away go and help that student correct that information so they can enter. Number three, or number four, actually, you can actually discover if somebody's trying to sneak in using somebody else's ID. That could be maybe because there is a test, or maybe just for fun, or for some reason, somebody's trying to guess the ID for someone. So as you can see right there, if I put some examples, you see how my three first entries are 3, 4, 5. So it has the same format, but they are trying. So if I could guess, so that someone is trying to guess the ID for someone. So then I know that somebody is trying to pretend to be somebody else, and then I can try to see what is going on, because it's not a good thing that somebody is posing for somebody else, and especially the freshmen, your student might not know them, so they might not know that that student is not who they say they are, right? Another thing is related to the sensitive information that your users have. And what is that? Typically, your ID or the user ID that is used in Accudemia is not going to be something like their social or their phone number, because that could be, I would never use that. But let's say that user ID should be sensitive. It's something that is a private thing that the user maybe used for something else, to request something else at the school, and they don't want somebody else to see that ID. Then if you go actually to the signing station option in that general module that you see in the control panel, you can hide the user ID. If you notice right there, that screenshot with the checkbox, and then it's going to be, instead of the numbers, you're going to see just symbols, so nobody else can see them. Now, another thing related to this, and sometimes the school don't use this because they think that it's really expensive or it's difficult to use or something else, is the use of magnetic readers or scanners instead of typing, the students typing their IDs or their authentication information using the keyboard. And actually, it's nothing more away of the reality. Actually, magnetic readers, and by the way, Engineerica sell those, and we can configure those for you. They are really cheap. They are really easy to use, and it's going to be saving you time because it's easier for the student to just swipe their card or scan their card than typing their IDs. And number two, nobody's going to see their IDs. So it's going to be a lot easier for you. And I promise you, this is really simple to get one of those readers or the scanners in the signing station. So the line, if it was taking 5 seconds to sign in, now it's going to take you a second or two. Okay? And yeah, the other thing is if you go to the control panel user account, to that module there, and I'm going to show you quickly, you have what we call an alternate ID. I'm going to go quickly so you see in the control panel, the user account. If you notice, You see that this third option right here. So in Accudemia, you can have a user ID and you can also have an alternate ID. So both of them have to be unique. Let's say, for example, that the user ID is something like my phone number. It's not going to be that, but just as an example. And I don't want people to know my phone number. So instead of typing my phone number to authenticate in a kiosk, then I could use, if I enable this option, I could use something else like my email or some other unique alternate ID in order to log into Accudemia. So now I have two ways to log in. If I forget one, I can use the other one. Or if I don't want people to know my primary ID, I can just use my alternate ID and log into the kiosk. This is something that must be imported to Accudemia, and actually most of the time this alternate ID can be linked to single sign-on. So if you're not using in your account single sign-on, which is a technology that uses your own portal or your own system in your school for authentication instead of Accudemia's authentication, then you can also please contact support, and we're going to help you to set up a single sign-on. And this alternate ID is something that we can use for single sign-on, and it's really important. So now your students, if you enable this and you bring that information, has two ways or two unique IDs so they can use it. So for some reason they forget one, they can use the other one, or if they don't want people to know their ID, they can use the alternate ID to sign in. Okay. Now, following on the sensitive information, and I know that this is a really complex subject, and that is why Accudemia has been growing in that regard too, is the, for example, you know that, and this is the screenshot right there. If you go to the control panel walk-in module, you can set the tutors to sign in without the password. Now, I must warn you, and every Accudemia is different. You know your own system. You know what what you prefer. But in this case, I would, ask you to consider not enabling this option. And the reasoning for that is that I know it's faster for the tutor to just type their IDs and sign in. But if you do that, remember that somebody, even as a joke or trying to do something evil, they can, if they know their ID for the tutor, they can sign in as a tutor, and then you will have information there. Maybe the students are going to be lining up because they see that there's going to be a tutor there, and it's not. Or they can even use it for something, else, like to sign in a student from the line or the waiting line or things like that. So if it's okay with you, then it's fine. Just allow your tutors to sign in without the password. But I would, ask you to think about not doing this. Typing the password takes a couple seconds, and you're going to have a more robust type of system, and you will keep those jokers, they could try to do something out of the equation, right? And then, okay, so I'm going to move on to the services selection path. And by no means this is a full list. I could give you hundreds of tips or best practices, but I have chosen a few that I see that they are repeated in my sessions, and the users ask about this a lot. If you don't know, you can have your selection path. So when the student goes to the kiosk and they sign in, the selection path is basically asking the student what they need. You can have a fixed selection path that asks about, I don't know, subject area, service, and tutor maybe for every single service, or you can have a dedicated path depending on the service that the student selects. And I'm requesting you to consider using this, and it is right there in the control panel walking module. In the top, you're going to see this configure selection path. If you enable that, if you don't enable that, then you can use only one selection path for everything, where you can ask, whatever you want. Now, if you use this customized selection path for each one of the services, then look how many good things can happen. One, those services that are really simple, like computer use or printer use or something like that, or maybe if you want to keep the sign-in to a gym or something like that, maybe those services can be as simple as just swiping your ID or typing your ID. I don't need to know anything else because it's a simple process. I just want to know who comes to the gym, who comes to the computer lab to use the equipment. Like actually, you can see that example in the screenshot below there. You see, for example, computer and printer use. The steps that they need to follow is simple as just swiping their ID. I'm just going to ask about the service. As soon as I have that service, I'm not going to ask about courses or anything else like tutors or instructors. I don't need to know anything like that. But if I have another type of service, like for example, they are face-to-face tutoring, then probably I want to know what course is that related to, what is the tutor that they prefer to have in the session, if they have a preference. Maybe I want to know the instructor that the student has. Probably I want to know more information that in the case of that computer use, where I basically just want to know that John came and Peter came. In this case, I want to know why John came, if it's related to mathematics, and then maybe Mary is the tutor that they prefer because they have been having sessions before and they have a relationship or something. So having that customized selection path is always a good option in order to make it simpler or more complex for the student to give us information about what they need so we can help them better. Okay? Okay. Now, something else that I wanted to share with you, and it's something that I see which is strange, because by default, when you purchase one of Accudemia account, and it varies depending on the account specifically, but I mean, usually you have certain Accu credits. Those Accu credits, those are basically SMS or messages credit that you can use in your Accudemia to notify students or tutors about their appointments, their walk-ins, and things like that. And sometimes I see that the accounts hardly ever, some of the accounts, they don't use those credits to notify the students, and so they rely only on email notifications. Now, I would like for you to consider, and this is something that I have seen in my experience that is helping a lot, to use, if you notice, oh, by the way, this is the screenshot on the email notification option and the text notification option for appointment. So besides the email notification, you can also use the text notification. So you can tell the student if they have an appointment coming in an hour, or tell the tutor that they have an appointment. So it's always good to have several ways to notify the students or the tutors about something that is coming up. So if maybe they are not reading the email, but they get the message, or the other way around. So use those Accu credits. Actually, every time an account is created, you are granted some Accu credit, and every time there is a renewal, you also get some Accu credit. And even if you run out, which actually it is really difficult because there are quite a few, you can even purchase more, and they are really inexpensive. So please use the option for text messaging besides the regular email notifications, because it's always good for the student to receive by several ways what they need to do, or if they have an appointment, or if they have a no-show, or things like that. So as you can see there, in this case, for this example, I have a reminder 1 hour before the appointment starts for both the tutors and the students, and I also have a text. So I send them both a text and an email to letting them know, oh, you have an appointment coming in an hour, so they get ready for it. Okay? And now something else related to the sensitivity, the sensitive information in Accudemia, like passwords. Now, in regards to with passwords, if you're, by the way, this is if you are not using single sign-on. What I was describing a little while ago, single sign-on is a technology that allows your student to authenticate using your school domain and not Accudemia authentication. If you're using single sign-on, then this is not applicable to you. But if you are not, and you're using Accudemia's authentication, then you probably know that you could create passwords using the imports. So you can create password for the student using, let's say, a combination of the emails and their phone number, or the street address with their last name. However you are creating those passwords, you could do that via the import, or you can provide the student the forgot password link so they can create their own passwords. And the tip or the idea that I'm giving you is to consider using this latest option to give them the URL or the link. And actually, if you notice right there in the first screenshot on the top, if you go to the login page in Accudemia and you're not using single sign-on, you have that forgot your password link, which you can actually just copy that link and send it to the student. And basically what they are going to do is that they are going to be putting their email, if they know, and it is in Accudemia already, they're going to have to beat a CAPTCHA, so to make sure that they're not a computer. and then they will set their own password. And the reasoning that this is going to be a better option. And by the way, if you combine this of giving them the access to put their own password with an option that we have in Accudemia is in the control panel user account, where you can enable, oh, right there is on the screenshot, where you can enable complexity requirements for the password, then that's going to do, it's going to make your Accudemia more robust type of system. Based in authentication. Remember that if you're creating a password for them, probably it's going to be either a simple password that somebody can guess, or they are not going to remember the password because it's not them who created the password. So it's always a better way to let them create the password and enable the password complexity so they don't put Jorge 123 or Mary 123 or 12345 or things like that. Okay? It's always better. Remember that in Accudemia, when they log in, they can access appointments, they can create sessions, they can do a lot of things, and we don't want somebody trying to or breaking into somebody else's account doing something, even if it is for fun or whatever. And the last but not least is something that I have seen. Actually, lately I have received a lot of questions about this because it's really powerful. Actually, this feature for the custom email template has been upgraded recently, and now not only you have email templates for the school, but you can have email templates for each one of the centers. Maybe in your marketing center, you want to say something in an email template that is not related to the computer lab center. So not only that, you can have specific email templates for the center, but also now if you notice, and I'm putting an example there, you can use custom codes in those email templates so you can provide customized information depending on the selection that the student made. For example, let's take that screenshot as an example. In my Accudemia, if an appointment is virtual, you see, I can provide the link so they can join the appointment later. But not only that, if you notice that code that you see in the bottom, and it is right there in the documentation, I'm going to paste, or actually, Nick, could you paste the link to the documentation about email templates? This is fairly new. But if you notice in the bottom, those codes that you see there, basically what I am doing there is that if somebody picks me as a tutor, then I can provide a custom message, like in this case, oh, to meet your tutor, Jorge, please proceed to the computer lab on building 5, first floor. And the same way I could do that if somebody picks, let's say, counseling service. Maybe I can say, oh, please go to the office A on such building. If they pick, I don't know, face-to-face tutoring, I can say, go to the center on first floor. So I can make custom messages depending on the conditions or the selections that the student or the student selected when they created the appointment. And that actually, I can even make it more complex because I can say, if somebody selects Jorge as a tutor and they also select computer use, for example, as the service, then I can say something different. So the message can be different depending on the specifics of the selection that the student made. And this is really powerful and it works wonderfully. The only thing, and I am about to finish, the only thing that I would like to point out about this is to be careful with the key values. If you notice, besides the regular test, there are some blue, those blue values you see there, we call them key values because they are linked to a value in the database. For example, there, you see this appointment join link. Basically, that is going to turn into the actual link for the appointment. And that is how we can tell them apart because they have these values. They are blue because they have a symbol in the front and in the back. So make sure that if you're using key values, you put those symbols right there, and you are not, missing one character or something, because otherwise the template could fail. So if you're using that and you make sure that the key values are right, then you can make the comparison and you can send those custom messages to your student, which is a great idea. That was all for today. If you have any questions, I would like to answer it now. There is a lot more that I can show you, but so far these are the tips that I have seen the students or the users are asking all the times during the session. Thank you so much, and let me know.
All right, Jorge, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? You can unmute yourself or you can put them in the chat. Uh, we'll move on to a general academia Q&A after we take any topic-specific questions.
Hi, Rachel. I have a question for Jorge. This is Julio.
Hi, Julio. Of course.
Hello.
Hi.
Jorge, when selecting the path for services or by service,
Mhm.
if once you have it selected, if you want to change the path, or is there a way to edit, or does it have to be deactivated and then add another
Oh,
path to
like
it?
you mean here? Let's say, let me put an example so you can tell me if this is what you mean. So right here, I see I have selection path enabled for some. You see my services here, so
Yes.
I can change the steps that I want for them to select based on the service.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So
And
you
then
see, go ahead.
And then when you have those set, if you want to change it, so you just go ahead and do the edits there
Exactly.
instead of, okay.
Exactly. You just go here. Let's say that for my computer and printer use, now I want to know, let's say that I want to know just the subject area or the course. I can change it. I can save it. And then for starting from now, I'm going to be gathering that information that was not there previously.